I already did a casual review of Master Detective Archive Raincode Worshipper Route Director's Cut Edition with the only person on the internet shameless enough to be seen with me, Tiny Leaf. So this isn't really a review of Raincode again, and this is just a particular annoyance I didn't talk about with Tiny that also represents a community-wide conception that runs rampant in this kind of anime mystery genre and all of the fan bases, and just the infected thought bubbles of the world. For starters, I find it difficult to rationalize the difference in thematic cadence between Danganronpa and Raincode. Now, I try to avoid, bad mental pitfalls, like imagining that everything involved in a creative project is a direct reflection of a single person's competence. More people work on these games than just Kodaka, and the circumstances of development and the circumstances of the creative ideas involved will always be different and complex and mostly unknown to general audiences like us. Still, because Kodaka and at least several other people from the DR team worked on Raincode, I instinctively think of comparisons and contrasts between the two in unsavory ways. DR has a lot of messages that feel kind of shallow or uninspired, but in DR, there's this constant self-awareness. There's an irony with everything. Everything is a very clear parody. It begins as parody and ends as parody. Anything that presents itself too directly can also be seen as ironic, or at the very least a thematic message that the game doesn't really believe in. It's more like the generic type of a moral that one could expect from a cliche-rich gumbo of narrative concepts. Basically, if something comes out of Monokuma's mouth, maybe you might be able to take it kind of seriously, but overall you should probably feel that it's meant to be ironic. As if fucking Monokuma would be giving out meaningful life advice or have an unbiased, profound view of reality. Now, if you were forced to make Raincode and DR align in some structural ways that would suggest how closely they are in terms of their meta and their parody angle, I think we'd have to consider Shinigami to be the new Monokuma, despite their obvious differences in roles. They kind of operate in the same way. It feels like, when you really look at it, it feels like they're supposed to operate in the same way. They're mostly background characters that they always chime in, but you can't really physically do anything about them. You know, Monokuma is understood to be the core evil, the actual problem, but he's also abstractly out of reach because he's immortal. You can't damage him, you can't do anything to them. He's just hanging out amongst the student folk, and they're just like, oh, fucking Monokuma's here. He doesn't seem to be constrained by the laws of physics either. He exists in a very whimsical reality. Because of this background quality, even though Monokuma is clearly and factually just the evil entity of the story, he's often comically treated more of an annoyance rather than an overtly sinister force. Sometimes he's sinister, but most of the time all the kids are like, oh, fuck off, Monokuma. You stupid fucking asshole. He's just this obnoxious prick that the kids think are annoying. They're not afraid to, insult him and anything. He's just this little shit, this little weirdo that's hanging around. But, they weirdly have a rapport with him in some degrees. They don't treat him the entire time as the authoritarian evil force that he technically is what I mean. And Shinigami is similar, perhaps less directly evil than Monokuma, because she isn't forcing murders to happen, she's just killing people who create mysteries. Although it's unclear in the game if Shinigami reaps the souls of anyone who creates any kind of unsolved mystery, or if it's only murderers. Also unclear about accidents that cause deaths, etc. The implications of her powers are very unexplored. They're hardly explored at all, but that leads into my main issue, right? Shinigami in this game, and basically all of the other master detectives, all of the, Halara and everyone else, they constantly shove down your throat this messaging very, very blatant, like, beating you over the head messaging about detectives defending truth, and the truth makes my dick so fucking hard, you guys. The truth is like crossing Adderall with Percocet on an empty stomach. The truth is so fucking dope. All the shit about deaths and murders and stuff. Now, why is Shinigami, who by all accounts is only a death god, so invested in the truth? That seems like a different thing. She's not a detective god, she's not a truth god. Her only defining motivation is that she loves it when people die. That's it. So why does she love the truth, and why does she have opinions on detectives, and why does she have magical powers that revolve around the truth, but also death? Imagine if you solved, like, a mystery of who stole a pie that was cooling on a windowsill. Like, we wanted to eat this pie, and now we can't. We're really upset about that because it was a delicious pie once it was cooled on that windowsill where it was unjustly taken. And it was just some little neighborhood kid, or perhaps Willie the Liar. And Shinigami's like, fuck yeah! We saw Mystery Labyrinth. We went through the Mystery Labyrinth. We've solved it. Time to execute this little shit. Let's reap his fucking soul. So does her power only work on murders? Can she provide no support whatsoever in crimes that don't involve murder? If so, why would Number One seek her power to investigate Kanai Ward if they only knew that death row inmates were going missing and had no direct proof of the murders happening? I mean, this begs another question of why the fuck Number One, who was ostensibly already the best detective in the world, felt like he needed Shinigami's powers now of all times, or at all, period. But whatever. So if so, why would Number One seek her power if they have no proof that murders are happening? They just know people are going missing. Or does her power actually just kill anyone who creates any kind of mystery? What about people who are just doing their jobs? Like, could she use her powers to kill soldiers who killed enemy combatants during war? And the mystery shit is just nonsense. Like, it's just utterly ridiculous. Like, if you want to get philosophical about it, like this fucking sanctimonious-ass game is trying to, humans know maybe 0.0000001% of all of the things that it is possible to know in the universe, and even that is inaccurate because it's impossible to justify how fucking infinitesimally small the amount of knowledge we have compared to all possible theoretical knowledge. We have so many things that we don't know about physics, the universe, biology, psychology, every fucking subject imaginable. Hell, we don't even know half the shit at the bottom of the physical ocean, just because it's so difficult to get human tech down there where the water pressure is so intense that it crushes most materials. So how does this game, and all of its moron characters, suggest that detectives are the most important people in the entire universe, and that they are the ardents of truth? I would have preferred, and I think it should have been, this makes inherent sense to me, I would have preferred if it was like a Hunter-Hunter situation, where in that, Hunters is like a profession, but Hunters also basically means anything. Being a hunter only means that you're innately curious about the world. All it really means is that you're curious about new things and you want to hunt and explore the world or explore knowledge or anything. So a hunter can be anything. A hunter can be a cook that is curious about expanding new ideas in the culinary space. That is what they hunt, quote unquote. That's how that universe works, and that would make more sense to me, but they just did it with the word detective. But as it stands, they act like truth, quote unquote, is as a broad human concept just means whoever killed someone in a murder case. And it's fucking mind-numbingly infuriating. On the opposite of truth, or mystery, is by and large not a man-made thing, generally. Scientists solve mysteries of different aspects of the universe. Some mysteries are generated because they lack observation or documentation over a long enough period of time, like archaeology trying to solve the mysteries of past civilizations, which, at the time where those civilizations were around, they weren't mysteries, because people were living there and they were aware of what was happening, but now they're mysteries because we don't have documentation for it. This has an inherent backhanded ideological stance on crime as well, that the game inherently has to imply, as if crime is made up of these great conspiracies and that mysterious, murderous crime is the primary cause of human suffering in the entire fucking world. It's also a dipshit way of looking at a concept like the truth, or the profession of being a detective, especially when for 98% of the time, you act like detective just is equivalent to person who solves homicide cases. I find it unclear what the game is trying to say about the death penalty, because it seems to think that killing death row inmates ahead of schedule is bad, and it sometimes seems to be criticizing Shinigami for her soul reaping, but at other times, it doesn't. And it's defending the soul reaping with Shinigami's own stupid logic, and also sometimes Kokoe just doesn't give a fuck. And it never actually implies the death row inmates shouldn't be executed. It's just doesn't really talk about it, so it's very unclear. But what annoys me is how Shinigami and the other master detectives argue about the role a detective has in this process. Like, Yuma complains, like a little bitch, about not wanting to murder 3 teenage girls. And then Shinigami and Desuhiko are like, well, a detective isn't supposed to have feelings or morals or values. You just find the truth, you know. But that kind of they kind of throw out that window when you're also acting as judge, jury, and executioner, not to mention that you are motherfucking operating in secret. You are fucking killing people in secret. Yuma, even to the epilogue, never reveals at any point in the story the fact that he's mass murdering people to anyone outside of the labyrinth, where afterwards they forget. And I don't even think he reveals that much to most of the people he brings into the labyrinth. So he's just mass murdering in secret, keeping secrets. Like, hey game, did you know that detectives are not the entirety of the fucking legal system? Did you know that? They aren't even lawyers. In fact, like, their work is entirely one-sided. Detectives work for the state. In real life, detectives work for the state. They work for the prosecutors. You can have, like, a PI or whatever that will just do work for you, but they have no legal authority. And sometimes, you know, but they don't work for the accused. They don't work for the defendant. Theoretically, the legal system is supposed to provide equal rights for both the prosecution and the defense. I mean, this is different in some cultures, but in Japan and the US and whatever, that's the case. There are limits to what a detective is allowed to uncover as their job, both to prevent police abuse by putting limits on how they can break into people's fucking homes without a warrant and stuff. They have to have limits on what they're allowed to do, what force and what investigation they're allowed, and also to protect the privacy of everyday citizens who are allowed to have their fucking privacy. Also, detectives are totally allowed to have feelings, by the way, and this leads to my first major, huge fucking complaint about anime fans and, like, the fandoms of these kinds of games. I constantly see Danganronpa fans playing the games and talking about how important it is to have zero emotions and only follow logic, quote-unquote, as if any of them even fucking know what logic is. Logic, or arguments based in logos, are not fact. They are not facts. This is a common misconception. Logic is a mental exercise. It's a process, but logic is, by its very definition, can only produce arguments, which, by their definition, are opinions, not facts. And by contrast, emotions and feelings and opinions are absolutely key evidence in real-life judicial processes. if you're investigating a murder and you're hashing it out in court, you'll never actually know the exact truth. That's not a thing. That's not possible. You can only gather evidence that may point to, that a rational person may assume points to this way or that way, or you have some idea or assumption of what happened, but you are still making assumptions based on evidence that you gather, and it's not a fucking fact. You don't know. You can just get a pretty good idea. You can have video footage of a murder going down in person, and that's still only evidence. Unlikely as it may be, it might not be a fact. You know, maybe the video is faked somehow. Maybe there's something that makes it look like something's happening that actually isn't, etc. Nothing in real life allows you to recreate the factual reality of the past. There is only evidence, and evidence is only interpreted via opinion, via rough common sense. And yes, having some unbiased person who knows you up on the fucking witness stand to say, I've known that guy for years, and I strongly doubt, based on everything I know about him and his relationships, that he would ever murder anyone. And that is completely valid evidence that juries will consider and judges will consider because it is fucking relevant to trying to interpret the likelihood of what might have happened. Every fucking time I watch someone playing Danganronpa start talking about how you have to only make logical, quote-unquote, arguments on the evidence, quote-unquote, I start fucking fuming at this global brain rot that's occurring. You know why serial killers are really hard to catch? This is very well documented. It's because they kill people that they have no reason to kill. They kill people that they have no emotional connection to. Complete strangers. Most homicide investigations, over 90% of them, are solved based on emotional logic. They look for the people who knew the victim, the family members, the friends, the co-workers. They ask around at places they hang out, at whatever. Establishing who had beef with who, learning about their social life. It's a real fucking stretch to just imagine that a murderer will leave behind enough physical evidence that will conclusively point to a single strong suspect based entirely on that alone with no other social connection to follow. Just some random person in a city. Unless they fucking left their goddamn business card. I mean, if you just walk up to a stranger at night, shoot them, and then drive away, depending on where you live and how, like, depending on some areas, they can, like, reconstruct CCTV, like cam footage of areas and streets and stuff, or like ATM cameras and shit, but a lot of places that's not possible. So, depending on where you live, it is incredibly difficult for you to leave behind any evidence that will make you get caught, or even have a mild suspicion put on you, unless there is some strong emotional evidence linking you in your social life to the victim. This is even more true in a situation like Danganronpa, where they lack professional investigators, and if they have them, the investigators are also suspects, but the main thing is that they lack adequate time for investigations. They only get like an hour or so to painstakingly canvass the pertinent scenes, and they lack scientific investigation techniques and experts that can harness them correctly. Now, I accept this in Danganronpa because they don't talk that often about how logic is all that you need, and they misunderstand what logic even means. And usually the characters in the game who are saying that you should discard all emotion are wrong, like 90% of the time. Like when Oma says, what do you mean Himiko isn't the sort of person that would kill someone? That's not a real argument. You totally have to suspect Tenko. He's always fucking wrong. And also, DR is such a parody of dramatic anime and mystery stories that I understand the whole universe operates specifically on a sort of weird reflection of, like, canonized anime cliche logic instead of real-life logic, so I don't care. I get more annoyed when DR fans make these sorts of dumbass arguments, because if you really want to be logical in a case like V3's Chapter 2, it is utterly insane that they did not force every single fucking person to reveal their motive video right at the start of the investigation, which would have revealed that Kirumi had her own motive video and revealed what it was. Because yes, it actually kind of fucking matters You can't just assume that crimes will leave behind enough completely tangible evidence that will conclusively point to only one suspect. And in fact, like, if you realistically look at most Danganronpa cases, the culprit could have completely gotten away with it if not for something that they did that left a clue that they didn't have to do at all. Like Hirumi, for example, could have just left Ryoma drowned in his bathroom and there would be zero evidence pointing her to the crime. Period. Because that's fucking reality. And now, DR, obviously, like I said, works in a canonized version of cliched anime logic, so the universe operates in an acceptance that there is a whodunit and that the crime can be solved. And the meta-commentary of the game is that the irony, especially of V3, is that the characters in the universe itself is sort of aware that they exist in this cliched anime world. But that's a different point entirely. Anyways, in reality, the legal system does care about emotional circumstances. This includes detectives in every other part of the legal system. The district attorney of a city is responsible for deciding how they want to prosecute a case that's not like a civil case or something. And the detectives present their findings and their opinions on their findings on a given case to the DA. If a detective sympathizes with the motives or the circumstances of the suspect, they will speak to the DA in regards to the case to ask for lighter prosecution, lighter sentencing, and then later go on to on the stand in court to speak on their behalf at the trial. The DA takes this advice into account for prosecution, and the prosecutor in any case comes into it with an ask. Like they're when a case starts, like a federal case starts, right, they have a certain punishment in mind that they think is appropriate, that they're like, this is what we want, this is the punishment we think is appropriate, this is what, reprimands we want from the suspect, from the defendant, whatever, and then they will argue their case based on how they can achieve that, and the judge and the jury will both also be involved in deciding how to punish the offender, if they do at all. So yes, every part of the legal system involves having emotions, dipshit. Hell, emotions are also vital for investigators conducting interviews to extract information from people that might have relevant information to a case. People who have a great sense of personality analysis and conversational skills to extract information from secret-keeping people. So, I hate this in Raincode, because not only does Raincode just seem like just a normal fucking anime game with a couple attempts at comedy, but on the whole, it's just like an anime game that's trying to tell a straight-up story without like a huge degree of meta or irony. Raincode also just shoves these incredibly dumb worldviews in your face over and over again, the entire game. It continually implies or insists that murders are the primary crimes of the world. Detectives are the entire legal system. Detectives are the only thing that's relevant in solving a case or determining a punishment or anything. That solving crimes equals solving truth. That detectives have every fucking role in the world. They have to do the work of a fucking mayor, of a DA, of a fucking, like, everyone. Judge, jury, and executioner as well. Investigations generate facts, they think, and that the legal system is an unfeeling and emotionless truth-seeking apparatus. All the things this game implies about how the world works are blatantly wrong, and I fucking despise, because there are some people that are gullible enough and roped in by fiction cliches enough that then they start to see the cliches as, like, real. Like, they think the world operates on these cliches. The opposite of what a cliche means. Cliche means it's not fucking real. And even more than that, I exude a flaming, embalming vitriol whenever I see any fucking degenerate anime fan agreeing with and propagating these stupid ass concepts. Every fucking person. When, like, okay, Desuhiko in chapter 2, he says he hates dead bodies and blood, and there's some guy saying, like, oh yeah, but you're a detective. What? How can you be a detective if you don't like dead body? I fucking hate you. Stop watching anime. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for you. It's not worth it for me. Every fucking person that ever agrees with Oma when he says that he's claiming that someone isn't the sort of person who would murder isn't logic, when Oma says that's not logic, that's not evidence, and that's not relevant in an investigation. Thank God you're just an anime fan and that you clearly have no place of authority in society. I actually just hate all of you. I dream about terrible things happening to you every night. I want every pigeon in the city to shit on your car, assuming you're old enough to have a license in the first place, despite being a fucking anime fan. Please suffer. All of those things in these games, or any other piece of fiction, is exactly that. It's fiction logic. It's not fucking real. It's not real life. You're trying to canonize a fucking storytelling cliche. Eat dirt, loser.